Okay, so this is the second part of shading the shape. So far we've covered how to do the value scale, grayscale, and a sphere and cube. So now we're going to wrap up with the last three shapes. The first two we're going to work on are triangle based. So I'm going to draw a triangle, equal sides, sketching out my lines, get a nice horizontal across the bottom. Let me adjust this a little bit. Yeah, it looks a little bit better. Okay, so there's going to be my triangle shape. I can pull out my shape, and I'm going to turn this into a pyramid. And the way I'm going to turn this into a pyramid is by adding a 45-degree angle there, and then bringing the angle up. Now you can play with that angle and the size of this, but generally you're going to want to have this triangle smaller than this one because it is on a receding plane moving away from you. So once you've got your shapes established, you're ready to begin shading. Don't worry about cleaning up too much just yet because we are doing rough sketches and just practicing our techniques. On the next step is to establish your light source. I'm going to have my light source coming in from this side. That means that the light is going to hit this plane square on, but I can't see that side of the pyramid. So that one will be fully illuminated, meaning that this side is going to be partially in shadow. So we might have some refracted light bouncing off a surface here, or just partial light coming into this space. So I'm going to shade this in with a soft tone just to give it some value as a point to jump off. I want to try and get that nice and even. Now I'm going to put a darker value over here. If you need to pull in your grayscale to decide where to do that, you can pull that in. But you just want to go a step darker for the moment. Then once you've got a tone in place and you're ready to start evaluating, now you can look and see what's the relative value between the two. I think I'm going to make this one a bit darker, so I'm going to come in and go just a little bit harder. Remember, you can always make it darker up to a point, but it's a pain to make it softer. Possible, but a pain. So once I've got that in place, I can reestablish any of my edges, smudge or blend anything to even out my tones if that's what I'm going to do using my finger, tissue, or any other tool. And then maybe I'll even throw in a shadow. So, you know, here, let's say the light's coming from here, and I might have a long shadow coming out here, just a couple of guidelines. And the darkest shadow is going to be right along the edge of the object. And then it's going to dissipate as it moves away and enters into some of the radiant light that's coming into the space. So, you know, you notice shadows under light sources tend to fade. It depends on your light source. If you've got a single super bright light on one place, this might be a very crisp edge and a very dark thing the whole way through. If it's under multiple light sources, then it'll fade at the edges because other light will hit it. So that's one shape right there. And the next shape we're going to deal with is another triangle-based shape. So I'm going to get a triangle. We're going to be making a cone. So instead of having a horizontal across the bottom, I'm going to add a curve. Some people find it helpful to draw an oval here. If you're confident, you can just draw a curve going across the bottom, just making sure it's more or less symmetrical on either side and matches your shape. Tweak as needed, and you get your shape situated. Now, I'm going to use the same direction for my light source. What's going to change here is that this is a rounded surface. It's not hard-edged like the pyramid was. So anything on here is going to be more of a gradient. So I'm going to start again with a nice medium tone. Nothing too dark just yet. I just want to get something in place to work with, and then I'll come back and adapt them as need be. Now, something you notice is I'm kind of working up to the point. Everything's kind of fanning out from there, and I'm going to keep that in mind as I'm shading. So as I wrap around the other side of the cone, I'm going to get towards where the brightest part is, and I'm going to leave this sliver empty. And as you can see, a little piece of stuff underneath my paper caused a dark mark there. So make sure your work surface is clean. Now that I have a tone established, I can start to darken in that far edge. Really get that a nice dark edge there. And I'm going to start working in my shadow again, keeping in mind that everything's kind of extending out of that point. It's all kind of crunched at the top and expands towards the bottom. All right. You want to get a nice gradient, so you want to see that smooth transition from one tone into the next. Not going to be too much of a sharp edge between them, and trying to keep it consistent, working whatever is comfortable for you. If you need to turn the paper, move your hand around, etc. If you need to come back in and use the edge of an eraser or another tool to reestablish your highlight, you can go on ahead and do that. And then just like the other one, I'm going to pull a couple of lines off for a shadow. Now I made mine really close to the edge of the paper. This would come down to a point just like the pyramid for a shadow, but seeing as it's not going to fit, I just have to kind of imagine where that's going to go and put the lines appropriately. And I'm going to have that deep, dark shadow right along the object's edge, and then pull it into a gradient as it comes out. There we go. Okay. So that is our fifth shape. All right, so far we have the value scale, sphere, cube, pyramid, cone, and now on to our last and final shape, the cylinder. The cylinder is also a round shape, but it's a little bit easier than the cone to shade. So I'm going to start with an oval. Make sure that your oval is somewhat even on either side. You don't want to bring it to too much of a point or have it too eggy looking. So it takes a little bit of tweaking to get your oval nice and balanced, meaning that if you were to pass a line through the middle, both sides would match. But once you've got that in place, you can drop a couple of verticals off of either edge, and then depending on where you want your cylinder to end, sometimes I'll just put a little bit of mark across from each other so I know where it's going to go. And I'm going to take this curve and bring it down here. Some people find it helpful to actually draw the entire oval in there again, but you're going to end up erasing that inside one if you do. So you're just going to take this curve and bring it down here. And one way to do that is to practice this by going over this line a couple of times and then bring your hand immediately down, hoping that your muscles remember that movement when you pull it down. Now that I have my shape worked out, I know where my light source is going to be, so I'm going to start shading. Now, it's going to be a very similar approach to the cone in that I'm going to start with a medium gradient, placing it in, and as I pass the halfway point, it's going to start moving towards light. Difference here is you can see I'm doing a straight up and down movement. I don't need to crunch the top. So I've got a start of a gradient there, and now I can start to work that edge a little bit darker and start shading in. Work however is comfortable for you. If you like to work in little circles, you can work in little circles. It's just about how you apply the pressure. The more practice you become at this, the more blending you can do with just the pencil itself. But in the meantime, you can use your finger or tissue or paper towel to kind of help with any blotchy areas and kind of work those out. You're never going to get perfectly blended, especially on this type of paper I'm working with, because paper is part of it, and this is just some printer paper. So if you want some really nice blending, there's other papers you can get that are designed to hold the material better, with more of a medium tooth and a composition of the actual paper that's designed for the accepting charcoal. This is a printer paper. It's meant for ink, but it's good for drawing as well. So I've got a my cylinder on here, and just like the other ones, I'm going to extend my shadow out, this time adding a curve on the edge to show that it is a rounded form. Darkest part of that shadow right against the object's edge, and have that fade as I'm moving away, overlapping and pulling my gray tones out. So I'm getting a real nice gradient. Now, this surface is not rounded. The tabletop is a flat surface, so my shadow can be kind of flat looking, whereas I want this shadow to look like it's wrapping around, or that value look like it's wrapping around there. Good. All right, So give those a try. Once you've got them all, submit them. Don't stress about making them perfect. I just want to see that you're working through your process. These do take practice to really kind of get a handle on. So do as many as you feel you need to be comfortable, but make sure that you submit them through Schoology. And good luck. Message or email with any questions, and I'll see you guys soon.